welcome everybody to this edition of Conversations with UX Copenhagen. Before we begin, there's a few things that I'd like to say. UX Copenhagen is a stage where it's a safe place to voice different opinions, and we do not tolerate any harassment or discrimination of any kind. And anybody joining these talks, the Conversations with UX Copenhagen, also adhere to our code of conduct, which, I mean, I don't even need to say this. Of course, you know, it's nice people. That's usually the thing with UX Copenhagen, is that it's a group of really nice people. I think if I can generalize, that UXers are actually really, really nice people. So the background for these talks is that I used to have these on my own, you know, just with the speakers, and we would get to know each other. It would usually be online because I have speakers from all over the world. So, you know, just getting to know these people for the first time is just so interesting, because you really, you know, get behind the person and you get to talk about not just, you know, it's not just them delivering information to you and you learning something, but it's actually getting to know this person. And I thought it was super interesting. So we started recording these talks, and it's been really great. And so if you've missed out on some of the talks, they are on our YouTube channel, and it's youtube.com/UX Copenhagen. What else can I say? I would like to welcome Helle Jensen. Also, this is a great experience for, you know, teaching everybody how to say Helle, because it's Helle and Helle. That's usually mispronounced. So I don't know about you, Helle, but usually I just kind of, you know, respond to anything.
Yes, just basically a noise that sounds almost right. Helen is popular as well.
Hell, yeah, you know, just like, yeah, whatever. Helen, yeah, I'm called Helen, and as you can tell by my accent, I was born in the States and I still have family there, so they usually call me Helen. So, you know, in Italy, I'm Elena. In Russia, I was Yelena. So, you know, call me whatever you want. I'll respond. Anyway, Helle and I, we've known each other for a while, but we actually finally met last year in March, like just as the pandemic was, you know, starting to become a really scary thing, and like really few days before the world shut down. And Helle and I have so many ideas for, you know, conferences and events and all sorts of things, which have all been put on hold. But we also had this idea for a talk at UX Copenhagen, and that's going to be the subject of what we're talking about tonight. And I am really excited to welcome you here, Helle. Thanks for joining us. And Helle is Experience Director at Valtech. You want to tell me about Valtech?
Yes, absolutely. I know I at least have one colleague on this call, so please, Hannah, bear with me. Hannah. I've been working at Valtech since November, so I haven't perfected my elevator pitch. But what we so sorry about that in advance. But what we do is we do digital solutions in a really broad sense, and what we really focus on is, you know, making stuff that improves human lives, and that's why I thought this resonated really well with with the theme for UX Copenhagen. And I can really, even though I think I have a couple of weeks where I can still say I'm new at Valtech. Then I hit the 3-month mark, and then I kind of have to, you know, to get used to it. But I think that I can already see that that is actually really the case for a lot of things. And it's a thing that's quite close to my heart, that we actually do something that touches people. But Valtech is a global company. We're based all over the globe. I am from Aarhus. That's also where I'm situated, but we have colleagues all around the world. I'm still getting to know a lot of them, and they're doing so much amazing stuff, right from what you would perhaps call, you know, classic digital platforms where I'm based as part of the business, to amazing, we call that connected experiences, but it's what you would call like in-store experiences for some of the world's luxury brands. We've worked with automobile brands as well, so it's in-car experiences as well. So I'm really looking forward to you know, picking the brains of those of my colleagues who are working with that. So we go really broad, but we have one common denominator, and that is we want to to create something that just makes people's lives better. So I think that's the one great sentence.
That's a pretty nice vision to have, isn't it?
Yes, it is, definitely.
I love it. Yeah. I was going to describe Valtech as full stack UX. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, well, that's a little more techy than I would go, but yes, definitely full stack UX. I have, when I sort of look at what my UX colleagues can do, there's a bit of everything. I mean, we have amazing people who are quite visual, almost designy UXers. That is not me. And then we have colleagues who come from more data-driven backgrounds. So think analytics and things like that. And I think that's the beauty of UX. You can basically, come from whatever starting point and have take your piece of the UX field and use what you already know.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're going to be talking about commenting. So a lot of people are asking me why I call it commenting, and it's a silly thing, but it's like co-design, but it's not co-design because we're going much further than co-design, right? So we're going to be I mean, we had the talk with Donald Norman last year about how, you don't go to Africa and teach them a way of farming that you use in Denmark. I mean, what good would that do? You have to go down, you have to understand what their resources are and what they're used to doing, and then see if you have some resources that might be able to improve their way of doing it, right? So that's the idea of commenting, where I had that from. It's actually from, I don't know when, I think from the 1700s in England. I think it's when they started talking about it, where they would do it in farming, where they would, just use each other's resources in the best ways possible. And, people like Uber and Pinterest and Airbnb, those kind of companies are contacting me to be on stage, even Facebook. It's all about sharing and shared economy and, using each other's resources and even, sharing an office space and things like that. And so, yeah, so that's the basis for the idea of commenting, which is, of course, really hard to portray in writing on the website. So hopefully, just joining, describing the talks and having people, look at this from different angles is going to be, describing. So, and you have ideas about commenting too. I mean, you have like four different ways of looking at commenting.
Yeah. I mean, and to be honest, I was a little confused at first, but I was like, wow, that's a huge topic. So I did what you must never do with huge topics. I Googled it. And then I think my brain just exploded. And I was, yes, it can be so many things.
Yeah.
What do I think? And what have I actually done? And then I sort of started thinking, and my starting point is often because of the things I do and because of the businesses that I've worked with is often some type of commercial starting point. At least in the UX work that I do, and then I have sort of a personal fire, if you will, for just making something that we can actually use, every one of us. So I started sort of thinking of combining that. And then I was talking to a friend the other day, and I told him, all right, yes, I'm probably going to give this talk about commenting and UX, and he was like, yeah, commenting is like for hippies, like what is that even? Like, and then I discovered I actually had quite a hard time explaining it to him. He's not UX at all. So I do realize I might have some work to do before the conference to actually sort of carve it out. But what I think is when you think of commenting, there are a lot of different angles into it, and you can think in terms of commercial commenting. That's not a bad word, at least in my book. Yeah. There's also something really interesting and really relevant right now, and that's what you could call psychological commenting. And I compared it to, at least the Danish audience will recognize Smittestop app, which is the app you use for registering whether or not you've been you have COVID, and then you indicate that, and then the people who've been close to you get a message, and it's all anonymized, and it's all, you know, based on the fact that you are willing to let other people know that you've been that you've got sick. So that's another really interesting and relevant aspect of that, where you give something to other people, but at the same time it's you know, and it only works if everyone's in it, and someone, you know, you give something and you get something out of that. So that's another interesting aspect of that. And then when we think in terms of digital solutions, there are some quite sort of, you know, classical things, if you will, that I came up with. You know, classical commenting, that's what my note said. So that's the more sort of classical digital solutions for sharing things like, you know, co-rides or sharing, renting a bike, for example, so things like that. And then you've got the really the badly executed commenting. There might also be an aspect of the commercial commenting. So in my mind, that was when businesses try and sort of loop you into this loyalty scheme where we all one big family, and, you know, you actually also help everyone else if you just reach one more star and just buy this and you get a better price. So sometimes they're presented as, you know, something that we share together. I even think some of them call them families, but really it's I think that's a quite sort of an off take on commenting, but still, you know, at least something that could potentially be aimed at being commenting. So I think there are a lot of interesting aspects in there, but I also think that if you like with a lot of other topics, it's quite hard to actually design for this on purpose, unless you have like a solid business idea that is solely based on commenting. But if you have, like, you still have sort of a more, how can I say, like traditional business idea, if you will, but you want to incorporate an element of commenting, or you want maybe to use some commenting for marketing purposes, or you know, for motivational purposes, then what do you do? And I think that's a really interesting problem. I haven't fixed it. I would have liked to. Yeah, all right, yeah. So I'll definitely spend that time fixing it. Because I think one of the really big pitfalls is this can quite quickly become too obvious if you try it out with the commercial angle. So if there is, you know, you need to make sure that there's the right amount of sincerity in it. You know, otherwise it's basically greenwashing, but for commenting, if you will.
Greenwashing for commenting, that's interesting.
I'm not common washing. I don't even think that's a word, but I think that's definitely a pitfall. When we look sort of you know, with a broad aspect across businesses, because I think it's definitely a thing. Like sustainability has been a thing for a long time. I mean, you can see that popping up everywhere when things you thought, oh yeah, well, I wouldn't have, you know, picked that angle, but whatever. So I think the commenting angle is going to get a lot more attention, but I also do think that it's going to be called lots of different things.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
And maybe it's the wrong phrase to use, but it's certainly not co-design.
No.
Or it's not just co-design. That's why I wanted to call it something else. And
Yeah,
of course I wanted to spark people's interest also, but maybe, you know, I don't know if it's working. No, but yeah. Okay. So greenwashing for commenting, that's really interesting. You know, it makes me think of, so Uber is a really good idea, right? I mean, I have a car. We had one of my previous conversations was also with somebody who lives in kind of a, I don't know if it's like a communal apartment that she lives in, but they have one car and like a bunch of families share this one car. And I love that idea. So Uber is a really good idea, but then there's the ethical side where somebody, you know, smells money and then they start, you know, misusing or abusing the people that are working for them, right? So ethics is, I mean, it's always an overarching theme for the conference anyway, but that's definitely something that we need to talk about also.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very big part of it, both when you're can we say the one who's providing the commenting, or the
car, yeah.
Yeah. and the one consuming it or using it. Because it can easily sort of tip from one to the other. And it doesn't even have to be about money. It can be about, it can be about, I don't know, comfort or, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it's an interesting question to pose, whether, or not whether, but who should control that? Should that be, controlled somehow? And who should do that? Like, who should impose the limit to this and that? And I think, I mean, that's also, if you look at it from sort of a more societal angle, I mean, that's what would be the regulations for, everything. I think that's the eternal question, like who should take the first step, so to speak. So, you can easily have a rule of some sort of regulation, but who should give up something first? I think that's probably the question.
Yeah, I mean, because in Denmark we're very attuned to providing for each other and all that, but maybe in different societies it's not the same thing. You wouldn't. I mean, like, for example, in the US, you wouldn't. Here we have, like, a farm might have a little wooden shed outside towards the road, where they sell groceries or vegetables and that kind of thing, and there's just a little box for money. And here, I mean, you stop the car, you put in a 20 kroner or whatever, and you take a bag of potatoes and then you drive home. I mean, in other societies, you would never, ever be able to do that, right? So that's also a different aspect that...
Yeah. I mean, those little shops aren't actually doing so well. I remember last summer, that was a big problem.
Really? Why?
Yeah, I don't know why. If it's just society is going the wrong way, or if it was, I don't know, just, everyone had a crisis summer. But I do remember, it actually took up a lot of time on the news that these little roadside shops, some of them were considering putting up cameras because they felt like people just stole their goods.
No, that's terrible.
But I mean, that's actually, it's not a fun problem, but it's interesting to see if it really is a problem, or if it's because they've become more aware of it. So that's, again, the angle, who's actually breaking a rule, or who's sort of, developing another sense of justice, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, we had kind of the same discussion yesterday with like open source development and stuff. At one point, it's all open source and all that, but it needs to be controlled somehow. It's the same kind of thing, right? Because you need like somebody to steer it in a way. At some point, when it gets big enough, you're gonna need a leader, or a director to kind of steer it in some kind of direction, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of goes away from the point. So what do you do?
Exactly. I think it's actually quite hard to get that that pure form of commenting. I think it depends, from on the type of society. But if we, for example, take the example of open source software, you see a lot of examples where it's a really big thing and it's put out there, and you've got a team working on it and they love it and they're like, yay, we're the unicorns. You can pick up all that. But at the same time, you might have a large following and people using this open source software, but you'll actually see it's a very low number of that following who will contribute to the open software. So it's become like the relationship, becomes skewed somehow. Kind of like you're waiting to be serviced with this great open service that's free and available to everyone, and you could, in theory, if you wanted to contribute, but you'd rather actually just consume it. And I think that's you know, if you really want to design for commenting, and if you really want to use that aspect in whatever you're doing, I think that is going to be a problem, at least in you know, most European societies. There could be a notion of, you know, there are a select few who contribute, yes. And I'm just going to sort of lean back and see what happens, and then I'll use it, but I won't actually, you know, contribute or speak up too much.
Right, and that's again besides the point, right? Because you're supposed to be using each other's resources in the best way. Whereas this is like, you know, typical group work where, you know, sometimes, right? Sometimes there's people that contribute and sometimes there's people that don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so I mean, maybe that's just, you know, human, you know, just a condition for commenting. I mean, so maybe it's not something that we should try and change. Maybe that's just...
Yeah, maybe. I mean, because we live with it, you know, in our everyday lives. Yeah. So maybe sometimes we're the ones that don't contribute, and sometimes, you know. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I think we can all remember workshops where we just sat at the back because we just felt like listening.
I remember one particular one where there had been a big party the evening before.
So you're not your best workshopping self.
That's right. So Helle, tell me more about you. Tell me about your background.
Yes. Well, I have a UX background, and I'm usually very careful with saying I'm not a visual UXer, because I think more and more people mix the two, and then they would get awfully disappointed if they saw anything that I tried to design. So I'm quite wary of making that distinction. Initially, I actually wanted to be an anthropologist. Basically because I just like looking at people and I like sort of studying people. I don't necessarily like that. This is going to sound wrong. I'm going to finish the sentence. I don't necessarily like people. I do, but I find people interesting. I always think, you know, about why do you do what you do? Why do you react the way you do? Well, that's funny that you thought of doing this, or why do you go this way or that way? One of my favorite pastimes is, you know, looking at people on the street and thinking, oh, I wonder where they're going. So that maybe they're going home, and then, you know, they live in this and this type of apartment, and they're going to do these things, and I bet they're going to watch this on TV. So that's just my brain going at it with stories about people. But I also found out that I probably only liked, like, you know, what would be 20% of the anthropology studies. So I decided to do something else. So I got a bachelor's degree in international studies. And then on top of that, I got a master's in IT, which is kind of like a lovely mix of, you know, I can do a little project management if you held a gun to my head, and I sort of understand tech and businesses. And over the past years, I've worked mainly in agencies. So I have sort of my foundation is in digital solutions. I've done a lot of e-commerce. And when I think of UX as a field, I'm quite sort of aware that I won't sort of take my own journey into UX and put it, you know, on everyone and say that's the right way to do it, because I know there are a lot of ways in. But I really do think that getting the craftsmanship first, and then sort of using that to decide, all right, so what do I like, what don't I like, what am I good at, what do I want to do more of? I think that works really well. So that's usually what I encourage people to do. It happens to be what I did. So I started out doing a lot of evaluations, balanced scorecards, where I basically just go through websites and score them based on best practices, which is,
oh, don't go to UX Copenhagen.
So I got a sort of a lot of facts crammed into my brain in a very, very short time. And then I sort of, from there, I thought, all right, it might actually also be fun then to solve the problems that I'm pointing at. And that is, it evolved from there. So, so I think where I'm today is that I've actually combined, you know, my technical knowledge of UX with what I perhaps today enjoy the most is just thinking about why are things the way they are. Why could we do something else with that? So that's sort of that's UX Helle, and I think on a personal level, I'm really just a soft hippie inside. I know I just said I don't like people. That doesn't really sort of fit well together. I just want everyone to be friends. So yeah. I want to make something that that people can use, whether it's at work or at home. And I like when things are fast. So that's probably one of my weakest point, and that's both at work and personally. So if we agree on something, I would like to do it now, today. So I think that's probably one of the things I'm struggling with the most, is that not everyone has the same sort of sense of when we're doing things.
Yeah. Especially in other cultures too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm still learning the subtle art of planning and aligning.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I struggle a little bit with that.
Yeah.
But you know, it's I think I'm getting better at just being okay with that, and then maybe letting someone else plan, because I know there are people who like doing that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's how I feel with my accounting. Take it. It's all yours. Have fun.
I would do the same thing. I think Excel spreadsheets is probably, that's my nemesis. I'm scared of them.
Oh, you are?
Yes.
How about, you know what, I noticed that one of our professors from the IT university is here, and she specializes in commenting. Joanna, may I ask you if you would like to say something about commenting,
Joanna,
and our take on it? Do you
Oh,
mind?
no. Oh no, Helle, you spotted me. I was at the back of the room.
Hi, Joanna.
Hi, Helle.
And also, Joanna, I would love to speak to you about, you know, presenting at UX Copenhagen.
Oh my God! Now you're putting me out of my comfort zone. You know, just to tell everybody, I'm the academic here, and I'm happy to see that my other colleague Giacomo Poderi is also here. So,
so Helle, we're really being grilled here.
No. It's, well, the thing is, Giacomo is saying hi here. Giacomo and I have been kind of hosting or taking care of this special interest group on commons and commoning, but very academic centered, right? So we're interested in the kind of research that is being done on the topic, and also trying to see in the research world, you know, what's the connections between design and commons and commoning. So I thought it was super interesting that there is this UX Copenhagen with both you, Helles, and especially Helle Jensen, you know, with this maybe corporate design interest in commons and commonings, which for us it's interesting to see, you know. But as you said, there is this also a little fear that would it be the next sustainability, right? You said it really well, that, you know, this, I like it when you said this this common greenwashing, you know, common English. Exactly. So please let's not go in that direction also. But on the good side, I think it's bringing awareness also to these concepts of of sharing, of shared resources, of nurturing and maintaining things that are in common for us and whatever it may be. And then if these things could become part of our vocabulary in design, I think that would, enrich it from another perspective. That it's not necessarily always about the business aspect, about the profit, about the, the individual and the private ownership, if you want, so that there are these other things. So
Yeah.
So I'm really happy also that this is, gaining interest outside the activism side, because in there are the common activists and also in academia. So so in I don't know, Giacomo, maybe you want to add something to help me out here.
Yeah. And also to correct us if we're saying something that's totally wrong.
I mean, hi everyone.
Hi.
I don't think, I was very happy also to, as Joanna said, to see that there is interest in the topic also from UX expert. And I think it's important that there is this attempt to try to incorporate this this approach or this vision, let's say, behind what we want to bring into the world. And I think that is what Joanna said, basically, that is really valuable, this uptaking of the concept and of the phenomenon itself in other spheres. Because I also to say, sometimes if we only look from an, I don't know, critical or academic perspective only, it remains too narrow, too confined into a niche area, and even sometimes maybe only the activist movements of commoning, I think they remain perceived as the sort of, I don't know, outliers of society who just want to, or not just, but they want to shackle the system sort of, and they do not get good reception, even if what they are usually sort of trying to argue, I think it's rather important. But I think that there is this maybe next step of, or I don't know if it's a next step or a parallel step, but anyway, this idea of trying also to bring that perspective in UX is really interesting. So I was happy that I could notice the event and had the chance to participate. So yeah, thanks.
That's great. Thank you.
I always think it's really interesting what happens to things when they have sort of a large aspect in academia, and then when they get commercialized, when we sort of borrow them for business purposes, because I know that we're not always nice to them. So I think it's quite interesting to see the development of commoning, and as you said, Joanna, the shared language that can be developed around it in UX for more commercial purposes, because there are definitely some I think some connotations attached to, for example, the word commoning. So you'd probably get some people immediately thinking, oh, that's political, isn't it? And that's activism, and do we really want that? So it's also a question of developing another aspect of a language, of talking about commoning for different purposes that are perhaps a little bit more commercial. So I find that a fun challenge, I think we can call it.
You had a couple of examples. Oh, that was the Smidestop, the app that we use here in Denmark. I think you had. Did you have a couple others?
Yes, I put down for the classic commoning, so to speak. I thought of a couple of things that could go under that category. If we're thinking digital, if we're thinking sort of slightly commercial. So the first one is basically, you know, the blood bank. That's very common.
Yeah.
You give something and perhaps you can get something, but hopefully you won't need it, you know, too soon. But what I think is interesting when we also think in terms of digital commenting around the blood bank in Denmark, at least, is and you go there and you give blood or plasma, whatever you give, and they actually message you when they use the portion that you've given. And I think that's a very interesting aspect of that whole experience around giving blood that should actually, you know, it should be thought of as one experience. And I think that is a great example of commenting, and a very important resource. I mean, it's you know, it's blood.
Yeah.
And thinking in terms of what you give and what you get, obviously you give, you know, 500 milliliters of blood, and then you go home. But what you do get is that, of course, you get the message. But what I think that's meant to invoke is that feeling of almost altruism. You know, you really feel good about yourself. I mean, I've seen a lot of posts on Twitter and Instagram, you know, where people post, you know, oh, I just got this message, so I might have saved someone's life. And of course, that's, you know, that's a commercial marketing aspect of that. They, at least if I had built that, I would have liked to think that I would have known that would have happened, because I think that's actually quite clever.
Yes.
And people would be likely to do that. So I think that's a really good example of a digital-ish solution that is still classic commenting.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. Yeah, I know that there has been some behavioral science involved in the experience of giving back to the user and telling them what the plasma was used for. Yeah, so that's also an interesting way of looking at it, right? Using behavioral science to do that.
Definitely, and I think that's perhaps a little undervalued. I know it can sound sneaky to say that you want to invoke the feeling of altruism in someone, and basically, you know, making them think that, you know, they're this purely good person, but it's such a good feeling. Yes. So why not? Why not just give a little bit of that if you can, with a resource like this?
Yeah.
Another example that I put down was, it's also a Danish example, that's Coop. That's a Danish supermarket chain. And they, in their communication, they're originally, what do we even call that in English? Andelsforening. It's a co-op.
Cooperation, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And that's also their name. So basically they still tell this story that they're owned by the members, you know, we're all in this together. And the reason why I came up with this example is because they have this contactless app. So you just go into the store and you scan your things and you put them in your bag. And you don't, I know the deal is you don't have to touch anything, but I quite like it because it feels like I'm stealing and it's okay. So that's the reason why I use it.
Oh, that's hilarious.
But it makes shopping so much more fun. But that's also got a notion of commenting, even though it's more commercial. But they have this loyalty club. Even when you use the app, you get discounts. You can, again, we've got a lot of sustainability in here. You can calculate your green footprints. And it's there's very much this notion of this is something we do together. You know, the more the members pitch in, the more the members invest, the more they get out.
Right.
So you can join on different levels. You can even, I think it's almost like opening an account and you know, putting in money in your account, and that's the money you spend. So you keep your account topped up, which, you know, if you think of the logistics around that, it's basically just using them as a bank, which is probably a good deal for them. So we shouldn't think, you know, too far into that. But I think it's an interesting way of trying to balance the, I don't know, good and evil. I suppose. Evil being the purely commercial side. But I think it's also interesting because I know it probably wouldn't work with all target groups. So I think what this also requires when you want to work with commenting is really knowing your target group and what would trigger them to feeling this sense of community and sense of sharing. And if I join this club and if I go on Thursdays and buy organic foods, then I know we can all enjoy this discount, you know, because we keep using it and it will still be there. So I think that's, if we think in terms of digital platforms, that's one thing that we're going to be even more aware of. I know it's been a long time since we just said we make things for the masses, but I think that's definitely over now.
You think so?
I think so. Maybe there might be like small fractions within the masses, but yes, unless, I mean, no, yeah, now you got me thinking.
Yeah.
Maybe that psychological commons, you know, the Smitty Stop app, maybe that could actually be, but then again, why don't we all have it?
Yes.
But that's, I think it's one thing I noted down that I'm just going to throw a question out there, because I was mainly thinking in terms of the, if we think of the psychological commenting and trying to really gather everyone around this the same course, and then the theme being COVID, that's probably that's an example of it being a dangerous course, but it could be something else. It could be something more positive. But I'm wondering about the political aspect of this, and I think that could potentially be a small bomb in the solutions that we make, because it can be such a minefield to navigate in if you want to design for commenting. If you're not 100% aware of what type of commenting is that and who is going to be pitching in into using these resources, it's got, all, at least, the way we define it today, it's got sort of a slight political notion that I think could be tricky to work with, at least. I don't know if you have any experiences with that.
Does anyone want to jump in? You can go ahead and unmute. And if anybody has any questions for Helle, or for
Just
maybe even
shoot.
the professors that we have.
Now that we have them.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions? I don't see any in the chat. People are, I don't know, tired.
It's late. Well, then I'll continue on all my big
maybe
big struggle.
if I may ask, Helle.
Yes, of course.
Because it's something that has been, of interest to me is to, I mean, you gave some examples of, or maybe it was the other Helle that gave the examples of, Uber and Airbnb and all of these things. So, but still they are, completely commercial, entities that have clear business models, etc. So what I'm interested to hear, and maybe from other people in the audience, is there in I would call corporate design, for example, corporate UX design or digital design more broadly, an interest in working with maybe other kinds of stakeholders that are not necessarily, business driven. So I know, I mean, I was in Finland, and I know that some tech companies do try to do some collaborations with communities or not for profits, etc. And that I would link to some kind of, commoning from the part of the design community also. So I was just, curious, do you have an experience of that, or do you know of any of these initiatives maybe?
I think that's a really good question, and that is that it would actually be really interesting to dig deeper into. I'm trying to sort of go through my mind and see, right, so what could some examples be? And every time a commercial aspect pops up. So, for example, in my world of digital agencies, it's not uncommon to do pro bono work for NGOs, but it is almost always submitted to awards. It is almost always heavily marketed in different channels. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but that is where the commercial aspect comes in. So I think it would be interesting to look into, all right, is there such a thing as an interest in a corporation without that aspect? To be honest, I doubt it, at least from the part of the market that I know. I could perhaps think, maybe in the grander scheme of things, if we take it up a notch and think in terms of governmental models, or, there could be something else in there that you could contribute to as for example, a tech company where you'd gain something that wasn't exactly monetary. But it's not, I'm not seeing it sort of from my inner eye at the moment, because it's so deeply embedded that even though you do pro bono work for the most notable charity, you're still going to try and win an award for it. So it's it sounds so bad when I say it out loud, but I think it's actually quite common.
Wow, I didn't even know that. I knew that. I mean, if you donate to charity, then there's a tax bonus, right?
Yes.
So one thing that I'm seeing though is that a lot of senior UXers are donating. They're spending time, mentoring juniors. So maybe, I mean, that's a way of twisting it, right? And or helping, do portfolios. So maybe not so much, as a commercial model or the company as such. It's more like, seniors that are giving away their time for free. I see that happening a lot these days.
Yes,
There's a big divide. There's also the whole thing about, juniors having a really hard time entering the job market, and seniors being discriminated against age-wise, and so there's a lot going on there. But I see that happening a lot with helping juniors in portfolios.
Yeah, I see that more and more, and just it's spreading out. So if we're looking at sort of an interpersonal level, there's definitely a lot of commoning going on there in terms of seniors helping juniors, and you can even broaden it out. And so I've seen several posts on LinkedIn with people just posting, have you lost your job? Do you think I could help you, connect you to someone in any way? Just let me know.
Yeah.
So that's, and I think that's the current situation, sort of triggering something in people to actually be more aware of helping other people. So that's, definitely one good thing to come out of it. But I do think that's not only COVID specific. I do actually think that it was happening before with, more focusing mentoring juniors, and also wanting to, give out your expertise and your knowledge to other people.
There's also, I don't know, Jana, if this would be relevant, but I heard of a concept that IKEA came up with, where they buy back their products and then, I guess, refurbish them and sell them again. We might actually get a talk about that also at UX Copenhagen. But of course, there's still the business aspect in it. And of course, it's so that, they earn the money instead of somebody selling it on eBay or whatever else, those kind of things. So I guess that doesn't count either, right? Still a good idea, though.
But I mean, it's hard to get to the pure form. I mean, because it's you always end up somewhere where it's sort of a little gray zone. And I think, at least to me, it's very important to be nice to yourself first. So allow you to not perhaps aim for doing the pure commenting from the beginning, but it's also a question of getting to readjust your mindset a little bit and getting to know how to work with that and how it works. I mean, one thing is how we as UXers and designers think about it and talk about it and design it, and a totally different game is what happens once it's out there, and how is it going to change. I mean, I think even one of the classical terms, co-creation or co-designing, has changed a lot in terms of what actually goes on and how we actually use it. And I think this will as well, definitely.
Yeah. Well, Don Norman had a big message for us about co-creation last year. So, and you can always watch the stream. It's for sale on our website. We have a question from a junior about the portfolio, and I'm sorry, but I mean, I would not be the one to help you. I don't even have a portfolio. I have a website. So I don't know, but maybe you could find somebody on LinkedIn. So try to look up, some of the seniors in your field, or maybe in your country, or closer to you. Yeah, that might be able to help, I would say.
Yeah,
Does anybody else have any questions? Yeah. Any questions from anybody? Feel free to either write it in the chat. Hi.
Yes, I do have a question. So in regards to technology, we do know some softwares that are quite open source. They have been generated by various developers spending their time and effort to create the tools. In regards to design, and especially in UX, is there something that is being done similar to that? Are designers coming together to actually pull their time and efforts to create something in regards to commoning?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know of any who are. I mean, I think we all know Google's design system, so that's probably the closest thing, and I'm pretty sure that's not 100% commoning. But I think that's actually an interesting thought. I am sure it is bound to be happening somewhere. We just haven't heard of it yet. I can't imagine it hasn't started.
What about what were they called? The Semantic Icons, or there's like a giant database of not just icons, but like whole screen shares. Like Gina, you use that. Can I ask you to help me? What were they called? The semantics? It's gone from my mind.
Are you thinking about Semantic Ui?
Yeah, that's kind of open source, right?
Yeah, it is.
It's free to use.
But that's more like a design library.
Yeah.
I think perhaps maybe what's missing from the solutions or the design libraries that we know today is probably a little more steady flow of input or a wider range of contributors. I don't think, well, at least I don't know any resources like that today. I think it would be super interesting to have that. I don't know. I mean, it's probably also a personality thing, but I can think of a handful of UXers and designers who'd probably be a little bit wary of doing that because there's always it's not finished, so no one can see it. So so I think we're all struggling with that from time to time.
Thank you. Looks like it's an opportunity for designers to actually step up a bit and open source some design tools or libraries.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, and Angelina, if you come up with some ideas, I mean, it would be fun to bring that forward at the conference as well. So, let me know if that would be interesting for you.
Awesome. It'd be my privilege. I'll start thinking.
Okay, please keep in touch then.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else? We have 5 more minutes with Helle.
I can say that we, together with Giacomo and some a group of colleagues worldwide, we also have started to with something that's called the pluriversal commoning slide deck. Was that the name, Giacomo? I forgot because we went. So anyway, so again, it's also one of these things that's not fully polished, so it's a bit hard to share with you know, people with a keen visual eye, because it's still a bit rough around the edges. But I mean, we hope that it would be a tool for co-design actually, and participation in design that would bring, you know, a bit like the type of ideation cards, but that would bring in some of the vocabulary of commons and commoning, and also this kind of other you know, buzzword also in participatory design right now, this pluriversal, you know, meaning that, you know, we should start thinking of, you know, beyond the one-centered universe, but that there are, you know, these different centers that coexist. So I don't know, Giacomo, when will we dare to make it, to advertise it also to people who have, you know, aesthetic sensitivities?
At UX Copenhagen.
I don't know. That might still take some time, but I don't know if they dare. There's still already the first slightly polished version, so that is already something that I don't know. But
maybe we could, you know, lure some people into contributing to making it look better.
Yeah, we could do that. We could, yeah. So after you guys present your talk at the conference, then, you know, we could have after the conference, we could do a workshop together with everybody.
That's a good idea.
All right. Let's talk more about that. I will reach out to you, Joanna. I think that yours and Giacomo's, I think the academic perspective would be really great to have also at the conference for sure. So if you're interested. So I think that's about it. Helle, it's been wonderful speaking with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Can't wait to, you know, to tell the world that you will be speaking at UX Copenhagen.
Yep.
And so, yeah. And unless anybody else has any questions, I'm going to let you go. Helle, did you want to stay on for a minute or two?
Yeah, sure. No problem.
That's great. Thanks, everybody.